start my messages off with something a little bit lighthearted. And I heard about this man who called into the church offices on a Monday morning. The church secretary picked the call up, and the man said, "Good morning. I would like to speak to the boss hog at the trough." Well, the secretary was just deeply offended, and she said, "Sir, if you mean the pastor, you're going to have to say that you want to talk to the pastor. You cannot call him the boss hog at the trough." He said, "Well, I'm sorry. I was just calling this morning because I was interested in making a $5,000 donation to your church." The secretary said, "Well, I'm sorry. Porky just walked in." Grace and peace to you from God the Father and from our Lord and from our Savior Jesus, who is the Christ. Amen. Everybody should have their balloons, okay? Wait for further instruction. Don't blow it up yet. We'll blow it up here in a second. But this morning, I want to talk to you about something that, frankly, it's hard for me to talk to you about. This morning, we're going to talk about money. We're going to talk about giving back to God. We're going to talk about the gifts that we can give to this church, and to our community, and to really a nation and a world that is deeply in need. But before I talk to you this morning, I just want to say how grateful I am. We are a small church. We're not one of the big churches. You know, we don't worship in the hundreds. We don't pack the pews every Sunday morning. We're a small church. But boy, we're a church full of givers. And it's not only money, but we're a church full of people that are active in our community, that volunteer in our community, that give their time, that give their tithes, that give their offerings to this church. And for a small church, we are known in this community for what we have done and for what we continue to do. This church has been housing Christians for almost 150 years. What I do here, my ministry, and what we do together is because of you. It's because of the gifts that you have given to this church, and it's because of the gifts that you continue to give to this church. And so if I say nothing else, I want you to hear more than anything how grateful I am for you. I am here. I'm able to do the things I love to do because of your generosity. Thank you. This morning's gospel message is one that I really like. And we dropped ourselves back into the lectionary. We transitioned ourselves from one sermon series on football, and next Sunday we're going to start a brand new sermon series on King David. This morning, we just find ourselves back, though, in the lectionary. What we read this morning, many other Christians from around the world are hearing as well. Our brothers and sisters in the Catholic Church, the Methodist Church, all kinds of different churches will hear the exact same gospel message that we just heard a few minutes ago. In the message, we hear about Jesus, and he is traveling. And I think we've heard it many times, this idea of the Samaritan. And the parable of the Good Samaritan is one that we all know and we love. And there is a Samaritan in our reading this morning. And I wonder if you've ever wondered just who were the Samaritans. You can see up here on the map, the Samaritans were a people that had a very, very specific place that they occupied. They lived in between Galilee in the north and Judea in the south. And the Samaritans were located right in the middle. And the Samaritans were a group of people that the rest of the Israelites frankly despised. They really looked down on the Samaritans because they saw them essentially as traitors. When times got rough in Israel, they essentially kind of turned their back on the faith for a while. And not only that, but they married foreigners. And because of that, there were some false gods that came into Samaria. And the rest of the Israelites kind of looked at them as almost half-breeds. They were half Israelites, but they weren't full Israelites. And so because of that, they were always kind of looked down upon. And you can see on this map, if you want to go from Galilee down to Judea, though, the quickest and fastest route was straight through Samaria. But most travelers back in the biblical times thought so lowly of the Samaritans that they would not travel directly through the heart of Samaria. They would take rather the rivers, the Jordan River to the side, and often they'd cross all the way onto the other side of the Jordan River just so they never had to touch foot in Samaria. This morning we read about Jesus, and he's traveling. He's on his way from Galilee down to Jerusalem. And he's with his 12 disciples, and this is towards the end of Jesus' ministry. He performed countless miracles already. His teachings had become widely known. People knew who this man Jesus was. People had begun to expect that he was to rise up to become the king of all of Israel. And as Jesus is traveling from Galilee down to Jerusalem, he encounters these 10 people. And these 10 people are described as lepers in our gospel reading. But lepers is maybe not the best way to translate it, because in biblical times, any type of skin disease was translated as leprosy, just because they did not have the ability to distinguish different skin diseases. It might have been leprosy, or it might have just been some type of contagious disease. Well, if you had a contagious disease or leprosy back in biblical times, it meant a rough life. More than likely, you were kicked out of your home. If you are married, you had to leave that house. You are no longer welcomed in the temple. You are not able to worship God because of this skin disease, because it was infectious, and because there's a way of trying to prevent it from spreading. And often these people that had these skin diseases would have to live together, would have to band together, and they were seen as outcasts. And so these 10 people no longer got to live with their family, no longer got to come to community events, no longer to come to worship God. And they see Jesus traveling, and they have hope. And they cry out, "Lord, Master, have mercy on us, heal us, make us whole." And Jesus sees them, and he has compassion on all 10 of them. And just the sound of his voice, he says it, and it's done. He tells them to turn around, to go present themselves to the priest. Now, why go to the priest? Well, the priest, the temple, was the one place that you could get a certificate that told the rest of the world you've been made whole, that you've been examined. The priests were essentially kind of the medical examiner in biblical times. And they turn around, they start rushing themselves to go find the priest, and they notice that what Jesus had said is true, it's real. They are made whole. They are healed. 9 out of 10 keep running. Only one stops. Only one, upon seeing that he's been healed, turns around, goes and finds Jesus to give him thanks and praise. I think that's very true of our lives too, isn't it? We all have agendas. And it's hard for me to blame those 9. They had this thought that for once they can go see their family again. Can you imagine that? Not seeing your family. And they had to go to the next spot. The next spot was going to the temple to see the priest so that they could get their certificate. They were just going to the next thing in their lives. And the joy and the excitement in their lives. It's hard to blame them for not turning around and going back to the Lord, back to the Master, back to Jesus. But one does stop. One turns around, comes and finds Jesus. And Jesus says, "Your faith has made you well. Your faith has healed you." Sometimes we translate this as "your faith has saved you." And there's a number of reasons why this can be translated in different ways. The Greek word here is sozo. Sozo, the top word there is Greek, that's sozo. And we can translate this in 3 different ways: made well, made whole, or saved. From this, we know that we are only made whole. We are only made complete. We are only saved if we live lives of gratitude. It's a beautiful gospel message. about the apples. You remember me talking with the apples a couple years ago when it comes to what the average American spends their paycheck on. Do you remember that sermon? Now, this is the average American. This is not your specific case. We all spend our money on different things, but this is what the average American spends their money on. And this balloon is supposed to be the balloon that we give back to God. Whether it be money, whether it be our talents, whether it be our abilities, our volunteering here in the community, this is the 10% the Bible calls us to give back to God. I want us to start with one big blow into our balloon, okay? One big blow and hold it. Don't tie it, hold it. Who's got the hot air here? I see some big balloons. Okay, so we've got to start on our giving it back to God. We'll keep working on this. Does anybody remember what is the number one expense on average here in America? What does the typical family spend the most money on? Housing. Very good. The average American will spend approximately 30% of their income either on mortgage payments or on rent, or when something breaks down in their house and they'll buy new furniture. 30% of an income goes to housing. So that's the first 30%. And it's gone. All right, so we were without the 30% already. All right, another big breath into our balloon if we could. And once again, hold it. All right, we're getting some bigger balloons here. We're working our way out. We're giving more and more, that 10% back to God. So the number one expense is housing. What's the second biggest expense on average as Americans? Ben, you got a good guess? Cars. Very, very good. You are exactly right. The second biggest expense is transportation. You know, whether it be buying a truck or airfare, or if you live in a city, subway, it's transportation. Buying new vehicles, gasoline, maintenance on the vehicles, about 20% we spend on transportation. So there goes two more. And you can see we're quickly down to 50%. The 10% we give to God, and then we've got 40% left. Now what else? What are we missing? What are the big things that we spend a lot of money on? Well, if you've got a nice car and you've got a nice vehicle, you've got to pay to insure these things, right? Insurance will take up at least one more balloon, probably closer to two more balloons, but you got to insure yourself. What else are we missing? Food, yeah. Our kids, that's a good one. Food, yeah, the typical American will spend about 10% on food as well. We're down to two things now. So we've got cars, we've got our house, we've got our vehicle, we've got food. What else are we missing? Entertainment. Then there's on about 10% entertainment. And just like that, let's give another big balloon puff to God's balloon here. Now this last 10% that we are able to spend, this goes to a lot of different places. And this really kind of comes down to our personal lifestyle. We spend it on lipstick, or we spend it on, a lot of different things. We spend it on cologne. We can spend it on all kinds of different things. About 10% are those just random expenses that come up throughout the year. And before we know it, books. That's a good one too. Education, books. Judy's a big reader, so about 10% probably goes to books in Judy's house. One last big puff into God's balloon. Now God's balloon. What God asks from us in the Bible is 10%. Now, truth be told, most of us don't make the 10%. Very, very few Christians, very, very few of us make 10%. But God calls back to God 10%. Well, what does that look like? That can be a number of different things. I saw the United Way is looking to raise money. I'm thinking of the FRN and the good things that they do in the community. This 10% does not have to be just giving to your church, although I think sometimes we think that that's the only place that we can give it to. This 10% that we are called to give back to our community can go to a lot of different places. And I know a lot of you give not only to our church, but to a lot of different places in this community as well. But we are called to give 10% back to God. Our time, our talents, and our resources, and our money. But God's balloon is different. You saw all these 9 balloons. What happened to these things up here? Pop, 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 right? We can't take those with us. When it comes to giving to God, though, it's completely different. God's balloon kind of works like this. I want everybody to hold their balloons up. On the count of 3, we're going to let it go. 3, 2, 1. We got one still going. God's balloon. What we give to the good things in this life, be it this church, be it the United Way, be it whatever it might be, it's essentially out of our control. We give it to God. We trust God to use it for good purposes. And it goes as it wills. When you get to this church, you're not only given to keep the lights on, but you're given to making a positive impact with the Fellowship of Christian Athletes at the high school. When you get to this church, you're thinking about today, but you're thinking about tomorrow as well. When you get to United Way, you don't know where those funds are going. We trust God. We give back to God. We give to our church with grateful hearts because God has so very much blessed us. Amen? Amen.